So welcome everyone in a new session, and totally I'm super glad here to be with devmenadd again. To be honest, it's super amazing, to talk about this kind of topics today. And for today's session, to be honest, we are gonna talk about one of I can say um, basically the easiest and like misconfiguration that really happen inside I can say an environment which lead to huge losses. Okay, so super glad today to be here, and absolutely thanks for Divina again for the invitation. So today's topic is going to be talking about LLMNR NetBIOS poisoning attack. But first of all, we're going to literally understand some concepts first. So some actually, lines about me. My name is Mohamed Hamdi, and I'm a cybersecurity engineer and IT cybersecurity instructor. Also, I'm an active instructor in the American, cybersecurity platform, which called Security.io. Well, there actually we are making some webinars and bootcamps about cybersecurity talks, and I'm making some cybersecurity also podcasts, and I'm writing some articles, to keep people totally updated about the field. Also, I'm a TEDx speaker, absolutely, and again, so basically in secrecy.io we are making some free webinars too. Next Sunday we're gonna have a free one, so welcome to everyone who is interested about the field, and absolutely the goal always to share the knowledge. So let's just go and flow and talk about our topic today. This is like our plan. Basically, I just tried to make it super simple one, and I try basically, to make it easy as a concept to understand, because when we talk about like the Active Directory Windows environment, sometimes we get a lot of questions, right? So the goal is to make the thing simple. First of all, we're going to talk about what is an Active Directory, why we need something that calls an Active Directory, because behind each something there is a need, right? There is something that we really treat, right? So what is an Active Directory? Because we have to understand that point. And second, we're gonna talk about, okay, if you have an Active Directory, it is mean that you are safe or not. What an Active Directory do, and what is an Active Directory if you have it, what must be done? Because here, like making and putting things, in a default configuration, literally it's a dangerous move, and it leads to a lot of catastrophes. Okay. And absolutely, we're gonna talk about some techniques how we can literally like play with those kind of vulnerability in Active Directory. And in the fourth part we're gonna talk about, and those are basically literally, I can say, it's like an invisible, I can say like invisible and hidden protocols. And literally, if you're just leaving them like this, literally it leads to a huge danger. Okay. And absolutely, we're going to simulate a little bit the attack, and trying to understand how we can compromise those protocols. Okay. So I can see all your messages. If you really have any questions during this session or something not clear for you, don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to put your messages, and absolutely gonna answer that. So So I'm sorry for the connection interruption. Basically, I think that there is a technical issue, and totally sorry for that. So I'm working on sharing my screen right now, and I hope that you can see it. So totally, I apologize for that. It's just a technical issue, and it really happens. So well, just we're gonna refresh a little bit, what we said. So here's our plan for today. We're gonna talk about, what is an Active Directory, because this is the first thing that we have to do. We have literally to understand what that means, okay? And it's really an important point to understand our webinar. And second, we're gonna talk about, when we put Active Directory, when we just like configure it, inside a company, is it really enough, to leave it like this? This is the question. And absolutely, later we're gonna talk about the kill chain, some techniques, how we can bypass it, how we can, basically, I can say play with the vulnerability that exists in Active Directory. And the specific point for why our session made today is the LLMNR and NBT-NS protocols, the invisible danger. Literally, if those two actually, protocols are enabled in your domain, it really means a lot, and maybe it's gonna just, make it catastrophic if we can't really secure them. And absolutely, we're gonna simulate a little bit, the attack. We're gonna play it to understand the concept. Okay, so here is actually, a small story to initiate things. So imagine this story, right? Imagine that you have a new friend, okay, inside the company, and he's working with you, and absolutely, the first thing that's gonna happen, maybe because like this is one of the scenarios, right? They gonna literally bring his device, right? You're gonna bring, I can say maybe you're gonna think to bring his device, bring his computer. He's gonna open his laptop, and he's gonna ask you to give him, the Wi-Fi password or whatever. And maybe, in some cases, and this has happened, right? We find some people sometimes they are feeling a little bit comfortable to work on their personal computer inside the company. Okay? They're open their personal laptop, and they are asking you to give them the password, of the Wi-Fi or the network to access, from there with their personal computer. And even like when you're asking them that, like we have to control their session, we have to know, if their device is okay or not, okay? Or maybe if we're gonna ask them to even offer them a laptop to access, the Wi-Fi or to control what they are doing, they are actually, trying a little bit to reject that, okay? Because basically they're feeling more comfortable without any limits. And here where the problem really, start to appear. Why? Because when someone come to your company and, connect on your Wi-Fi with his personal or her personal laptop, this is, unacceptable. Okay? Because, someone literally just, putting his device, I don't know, as an IT administrator, I don't know, this is gonna make a lot of issues. What if that's someone who came to my company, had like, a laptop was infected with malware. Okay, so this is gonna be literally a huge a problem. So we need something, because this is the need. Okay, when we invent something, we need actually, to think about what really missing, in this chain. We need something that really control anyone. When someone came to our company, we need to put a control on that device. We need to concentrate on what he's actually, doing with his session, or even the permissions. I mean, like, from this point, from this need, came something called an Active Directory. Okay, and imagine about your friend who is bringing his device. Okay, he just, bringing his computer, and maybe the next day he's working on his session. Maybe in the next day they're gonna come to you and they're gonna tell you, hey, I forgot my password. I don't know, maybe my laptop gets stolen. Okay, so imagine that you're working with a friend on the same company, and he's working on his personal laptop or whatever, or even he's working on a local session, and he come to you, the next day, and tell you that, hey, I forgot my password, and you both working on an important project. What are you gonna do here? Are you gonna just like try to recover that password? You're gonna lose a lot of time, because your friend from the beginning, he didn't respect the policy of the company, and he wanted to work with no limits, connecting on your Wi-Fi or whatever, and without any control by you. Okay, and this is actually what really create the need, what really create um, something that we can control with. If someone come to your company and he want to access your network, if someone want to access with his laptop from your network and start to work, absolutely we need something, a point when we can focus what he's doing, what is the permission that I must actually give to that person. Okay, and to put all of that inside my control. We need a control in a company. We need to know when the people bring their own devices, or even they are working with their personal computers, maybe because I know some companies, for example, this is one of examples. I know some companies, they are not really offer that high quality computers when they are hiring someone, and imagine that maybe that new actually engineer gonna tell to himself, hey, maybe I'm not gonna work on the laptop that the company offered to me, but I'm gonna just bring my device. Okay, and he gonna bring his own device. He gonna just put his computer, access your Wi-Fi from your computer, or like access the network from his computer. And what if he's working on his computer, he has like an important project to work on, and tomorrow he gonna come to you, he gonna tell you, hey, my password, it doesn't work, I don't know what is the issue. Here you're gonna feel as an IT administrator a lot of regret. Why? Because from the beginning you are not controlling, you are not even trying to implement the policy for that. Okay, so we have from the beginning, if someone come you know come to work with you or something, we have to control his session, and we have to put a control on him. Okay, because as an IT administrator, as a security as security responsible here, you have to ensure that the policy is implemented and you really have the control. Okay, so the problem that the life is really so hard if there is not, there is like no something that controlling someone's session. Okay, so here's like one of the problems. Here's the problem of the permissions. I'm gonna give an example. Okay, so absolutely, you are seeing my whiteboard here. Just a second, I'm gonna share it with you. So imagine that, for example, you have an engineer working with you. Okay, and he called John. So I can say like one of the scenarios that John need an access or a permission to access the database. Okay, let's say that. And I don't know, like there is another user that called, maybe, I don't know, Sandy, and she's gonna ask you to give her a permission to access I don't know, like one of the servers. Okay, but what if you have like, I don't know, like 1,000 employees that need a permission? Okay, I mean, here you are not gonna literally just adopt with that, because you're gonna be, if there is like no point that really control the permissions, and if there is like a lot of people try to access and they're asking you for giving them a permission, as an IT administrator here, or someone who is responsible of the security of the company, you're gonna be a little bit confused. There is a lot of people, they need a permission for me, and I have literally to know how can I do that. What if you give an account for Sandy to access this server? Okay, you made her an account, and you made an account for John to access, the database. But John, he wants to access to the server too. Okay, so you're gonna create an account for John to access the backup server. Also, you create another account for John to join the server. And here, basically, it's gonna be, it's super stupid as an idea to manage a thing like this. Because here, actually, like, there is an explosion of the accounts. Now, John, he has, like, an account to access the backup server, and he gonna has another account to access the server, another one. Maybe he need to access, to another resources in the company. Maybe he gonna have 3 accounts. Okay, so this is gonna be a little bit complicated, and we are not gonna be able to manage the users, and we are not gonna be able to manage the account inside our infra, because here we are not gonna be able to manipulate the requests of the permission. So what about, if there is like somebody asking you, hey, I want a permission, you create an account for him. I want a permission on a backup server, you create an account for him to access the backup server. I want to, I don't know, like I want a permission to access, a specific server on the company, and then you create an account. So the idea is going to be literally so bad if you are not going to manage all of that with a point that can centralize everything and manage everything and make things easier for you. Okay, and here we're talking about when the magic appeared, the year of 2000, where basically, Microsoft, they thought about something, and they say, hey, if you want to manage your permission inside a company, and if you want to like take a control on, an account, or maybe someone working with us with a single account, for example, I can do it. And I can create something, we calling it an Active Directory. Now, I don't want you to make it confused about it, because an Active Directory, it's a feature inside a Windows server. Okay? Again, an Active Directory is like a feature, okay, inside a Windows server. It means if you want to just, put an Active Directory, inside your company, and absolutely you must, okay, you're gonna have basically, to install a Windows server first, and later you're gonna just download an Active Directory server, which is a feature on the Windows server itself, and try to configure it from the beginning. Okay, so basically the idea started, in 2000, but I want to tell you another information here, that the Windows server like 2003, 8, and 12, they are not supported right now. Okay, so they are literally old, and absolutely here, if you're gonna use one of them, Microsoft not gonna offer for you any security updates. Okay, we have to deal on that. So which really like still active, they are 60 and the 90 and 22. Okay, so we have to think about that. Well, the idea is, again, what is the importance of the Active Directory? This is the question that we have to answer, right? So the importance of that, basically, and this is like the most basic features on it, which is if I really had, like an engineer working with me, and again, he's a John, and he want to access to a lot of resources inside the company, like, a backup server, an ESXi server, okay? The idea here that I can do it from one account without needing to creating a lot of account on the target resources. It means here, I'm not obliged basically, to create an account for him in the backup server. I'm not really like obliged literally to create another account here for another server. No, we have something, we call it a Windows server. And then when you configure your Windows server, absolutely, here you will have more control, because with one account, I can really manipulate all of that John account, and I can give him a permissions, and I can even oblige him to secure his account, right? John, for example, he's kind of lazy person, okay? And he's not, for example, I can say changing his passwords often. So maybe he's changing his password after 4 months, maybe 6 months, okay? So here, through my Active Directory, I can oblige John to change his password each 1 month, okay? I can even oblige him to use a password with a specific length, okay? Here, for example, I can just like oblige him to create a passwords contain 12 characters, for example, okay? So I can really have a control in my environment. This is actually the core of the concept. I mean, here's the point that I really want to make control on my environment and not letting anyone accessing with his personal computer or his personal session and connect to my network, and then he causing a lot of problem for me. So the solution is really not that complicated. I have to install something that called Windows Server. Absolutely, you need physical server. You're gonna install a Windows Server on, and take care. Don't install the 2003 version and 8 and the 12 because they are not supported. You have to install a supported Windows Server, and then you try to configure the Active Directory. Okay, what exists inside an Active Directory? The account of John. We're gonna create an account for him, and then I can manage his permission, his security, his password length. I can manage even like the period when he's changing his passwords, and I can have like a lot of control on his account. Now, basically, you are here managing your infrastructures. You're not putting no one in a danger. Okay, so this is why we need an Active Directory. Okay, so the first thing that why we just like made it is the security authentication. I mean, if someone want to access to a resources inside a company, if John wanted access to the backup server, he has he has asked the IT administrator to create an account for him inside the Active Directory and give him the permission to access to the backup server. Okay, I mean, with an Active Directory, even I can have a control on the computer of John, and I can just even limit the things that he can install on his computer. Okay, so this is actually the magic of Active Directory, and is what we call it the centralized security management of network resources. Now we have like a lot of users, and those users basically they want to access to a lot of resources. And absolutely, I'm not going to create a lot of accounts for them and manage their permission. I'm going to do it through something that calls an Active Directory. I'm going to manage their accounts, and I'm going to just have a control on their permissions, through an Active Directory. So through an Active Directory, you can basically like even reset the passwords, create deleting users, and you can manage even the individual computers. And this is something super great. And you have right now, as an IT administrator, more control on your environment. Okay. So, and even again, the second thing on, concept, which is, having like an account that you can access, with that account to a lot of resources. For example, I can create for John, I can create for him an account inside an Active Directory, which really allow him to access a lot of resources. And this is what we said, from the beginning, right? So one account, it can literally make you access to a lot of resources inside your company. Okay, so back to this example, and what do we mean about that? We mean that, again, John, he want to access to a backup server, and he want to access to a web server. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We are not gonna create here a login for him in each resources. No, we are not gonna make that. we're gonna install something we call Active Directory. We're gonna create an account for him. He gonna log in, to that account from his computer, and then he can access to all the resources that I give him the permissions. Okay. Now I have a control, and literally I have a comfortable situation to manipulate things. I have more visions on the people that working with me. Okay. I have I have literally more control on what John can access, when John can access. I have even control on the security of the device of his computer when he's changing his passwords, the password length of his passwords, and going on and on. Okay, so this is why we use Active Directory. And absolutely, when it comes, to say that I have an Active Directory inside my company, you have to remember something, that the 100% security, it never exists. What that mean? You decided to install an Active Directory inside the company, and you're not configured it with the correct way. Okay? Now, the thing that we have to know in cybersecurity always, a default configuration, it's a vulnerability, which lead to exploitation, which lead to someone exploiting that default vulnerability. Now, the thing that you have to know, when we install and configure an Active Directory at the beginning, it doesn't mean that you are safe. It doesn't mean that you are safe. It means that you start to think about securing the network, but you have to make a lot of work, a lot of correcting of a misconfiguration on the Active Directory, because the Active Directory itself has a vulnerability. And if you are not going to manage them, if you are not going to correct them, it's going to literally goes to a lot of dangerous situations. So again, to simplify the things for you, we are using an Active Directory to have more control on your environment, to not let anyone who can connect to your network and do what he wants, and to limit the permissions. Okay, literally to limit creating of a lot of accounts of permissions. If someone needs permission to a resources, I'm not obliged to create an account for him on that backup server or a web server. Now, through one account, you can access to a lot of services. But if you really install an Active Directory, it doesn't mean that you're safe initially, but it means that you have to literally take care of the misconfigurations. Okay? So yeah, this is the point. And I mean, again, in Active Directory with the default configuration, there is a lot of, I can say, vulnerabilities that can be exploited. We're going to simulate one of them today, and it's super basic one. I hope that the concept is clear. Please don't hesitate if you really feel like something really make you confused or something. Just put your question, and I'm gonna just try to answer. So Mohammed, he said like, hello, can the Windows server be deployed in the operating system virtual machine as a hypervisor environment like VM? And yeah, exact, Mohammed, if you're listening to me, yes, we can do that. We can do that. But it's recommended. It's recommended, in the production environment, it's recommended to buy a physical server and to install a Windows server on. I don't know, like I feel like it's gonna be a little bit actually not logical. If you want to manage a production environment, it's not gonna be logical to put like an Active Directory inside an hypervisor. It works. It works. You can do that. Okay, Muhammad, you can do that. You can put an Active Directory, and you can just try it, or try to play with it inside a hypervisor. But at the same time, it's recommended to put it on isolated, server. It's a physical server, okay, and we're installed on a Windows server, okay. So it's gonna be better. It's gonna be manageable, more, because why, Muhammad? The Active Directory is, I can say, like, it's literally a sensitive resource, And imagine that, for example, you are facing an issue with the hypervisor. What that means, your Active Directory not going to be working. It's a single point of failure. So if that Active Directory gonna shut down, you're gonna open a lot of issues inside the company, okay? And absolutely, it's gonna be like horrible. So it's recommended to put it on a physical server and in a production environment. So how to increase the security degree for an Active Directory session? Absolutely, we're gonna talk about that. Just hold on, Hamad. Your question is super important, and we're gonna just talk about it. Okay. So please, again, if you have any questions, I'm hearing you. Okay. Amazing. I'm reading all your questions here. So here's the thing. So Mohammed, he asked a lot of, he asked basically a super good question, and he just like, you know, asked that question: how we can increase the security of a session on Active Directory, right? This is super important question. Now you have an account inside the Active Directory, right? And you're gonna use your account, so it's gonna be like a session. So this is it. Now let me tell you something. Um, like the problem that sometimes with the humans that sometimes you are feeling a little bit lazy about the passwords. What that mean? You're putting your birthday, you're putting your cat name. Um, I don't know, like you're putting literally in easy ones. This has happened. Let's just deal on that, okay? So, and the problem that when it comes to talk about um, it comes to talk about the policies, when a company creates a policy, this is a huge problem. We have to know that some of the companies, they are, when they're creating a policy, it means a physical policy on a paper, okay, and start to tell you the rules, like, hey, don't use the passwords that contain like an 8 characters with your birthday. Some engineers, they are not really just applying that. It's just like a policy, right? They're gonna be like, okay, it's a policy, but I'm not gonna implement it. Okay, so we need something that impose the implementation of that policy. Again, what is a policy, right? The policy, it's like a lot of rules that imposed by a company to protect their engineers and to protect their infra, right? But here, if I have like a policy on a paper, rules on a paper, no one gonna listen to that. Okay, and absolutely, I can tell you that we need that Active Directory to enforce the application of those rules and those policies. Okay, so when it comes how we can literally protect the session, it comes through a policy, but not a policy on a paper. It's a policy inside the Active Directory itself. Now, inside an Active Directory, there is something we call a GPO, okay? The Group Policy Management Editor. And through that policy, we are putting a lot of rules. I'm gonna explain more. Now, we're gonna make like a small comparison between, like the policy that really exists on a paper and the policy that, in Active Directory. The policy that, written by a company on a paper, it not basically most of the time not going to be implemented if there is like someone who really enforce to be implemented. But the policy that exists inside an Active Directory, it's going to be forced to implement it. And here we can basically put rules that we are sure that gonna be adaptable and implemented by the users. Okay, your account is there. Your account is inside an Active Directory. It means those rules that you see right now that exist on a policy that gonna be implemented by obligation. You like them or not, they're gonna be implemented. You got me? But here is the vulnerability itself by the concept. This is an important point. I want you just to focus on me on that. The problem that if you gonna just see that one of the rules of the policies of the Active Directory, one of the default and the misconfiguration rules, it's a default configuration. Now take care, it's a default configuration. It means when you install the Active Directory, this is the default settings. Okay? Take a look on that. They tell you that the minimum password length is a 7 character. Okay? So it's not that huge. Okay, it's not that really kind of, super, I can say, criticize this of a seven characters of the password length. But what about the minimum password age and the maximum password age? I'm gonna explain this, super clearly why it's a vulnerability itself. Now, the minimum password age and the maximum password age is how long your passwords gonna be, useful for you and gonna be working. Okay, I'm gonna give an example with that. So why it's a vulnerability when we limit those parameters? Because just imagine that, just imagine that John, he access, with his computer, and absolutely his account is inside an Active Directory. Okay, so what is the problem with that? The problem with that, I mean, his credentials, he's gonna access, through his credentials, and everything gonna be fine. Okay, so but we have like an issue here with an Active Directory. We are controlling the passwords of a John, right? So we are controlling the account of a John. It means like we are controlling the password that he is using and the length of the password that he is using. But if I'm gonna oblige him to not change the passwords, minimum age as in 1 day and the maximum age as a 42 day, when he can't change his password, this is a vulnerability by concept and the policy. Why? Because if the computer of John gonna be compromised by a malware or someone hacking him, okay, what is the issue? If John knew that, he will not be able to make, I can say, a self-interaction. He's not gonna be able to change his password to protect himself. You got me? So this is the issue, because here I obliged him to limit his password from 1 day to 42 days to change his passwords. It means if his passwords got compromised and if someone know his passwords, he gonna stay inside the system for 42 days. This is actually the vulnerability itself. Okay, so that's why putting an Active Directory, to be honest, I mean, if we're gonna put it with a default configurations and a default, settings, absolutely you're gonna open more vulnerability inside your network. So we have to take care about that. It's I can say, one of actually, the misconfigurations and default misconfiguration basically. So we have to take care about that. Okay, so, and absolutely, tell you something too, that I know maybe even like, some IT administrators, they really accept to stay with the 2012 server. What that mean? It means like they have a little bit of fear of patching or updating the Active Directory, because again, the Active Directory server, it's a little bit sensitive resource inside the company because he's managing the permissions and doing all those kind of stuffs. But if you are working, for example, with the version 2012, to be honest, here Microsoft itself, they said that it's not going to be supported. It means no security patches, no nothing. You have, as an IT administrator, to patch and to update your version. Okay? But like sometimes I can say you can meet some people that they're feeling afraid of updating the things because they think if they're gonna do it, maybe gonna open for them a lot of issues, the technical issues. Maybe the update gonna be like I don't know, like not gonna be super completed to work fine. So they are just wanted to see it works. They're gonna be like, hey, I work even with 28 Active Directory, it's fine for me, it works, it's fine. No, take care about that. Always we have to go with the updates that happens. Okay, because literally, I can tell you that if your Windows server not going to be supported, you're just working with that on your own responsibility. Okay, so take care about it. And yeah, so take care about the fear of patches. It's not because it works it means it's fine. Okay, so try always to look to the things from a different perspective. So how do you know the things works, or how we can bypass the Active Directory? There is like a wall methodology behind that. A wall methodology. The first thing is in external reconnaissance. So what happened that, like those kind of external hackers who are thinking about, hey, this company, I want to just really target this company. So he gonna came to you, from outside. He gonna make his reconnaissance. He gonna do what? He gonna basically try to scan your network, try to scan your Wi-Fi's, try to scan any access points that lead to enter your network. And it happened, and he succeeded to do that. He can do it, and he can compromise one of the machines in your company. And then from that machine, from that user machine inside your company, he gonna make what we calling it an internal reconnaissance. He gonna scan right now the network from inside, and he gonna know more about your network. Okay, and he gonna be super lucky if he got a local privilege escalation. What that mean? It means that if he could compromise someone machine that working with you, and that machine has an admin permissions. This is what calling it the escalation of privilege. I mean, let me just explain this, more. So privilege escalation is actually like need kind of a methodology behind it and some of the steps. Now let's say that you have John again. Now John basically he's I can say a simple user inside the network. He didn't he actually like not manipulating a lot of permission. He's not accessing a lot of resources. It's a normal user. Okay, now John, what if someone from external, a bad guy, succeeded to compromise the machine of John? Now he's a simple user, right? But he gonna inject a malware here. He gonna inject a malware on the computer of John. And what he gonna do? He gonna basically, with this malware, even actually like the session of John, it's a user. What he gonna do? He gonna try to scan from this compromised machine. He gonna try to scan the internal network for more machines. And then what if that hacker just succeeded to do what? To basically compromise a computer that has an admin privileges. It's gonna be super bad. Okay, now this is what we call it, a privilege, escalation, because here what we actually start from, what we hacked is, a simple user. From a simple user, we could access to admin machine, okay, inside your network. And what if that admin machine has an admin privilege on an Active Directory? Can you get it, right? I mean, like, things going step by step here. Someone just access from outside and, go through like simple user. Then, he could scan from that simple user machine the internal network, and then he could compromise another machine, but this time it has, a privilege, more privilege, and an admin access to the Active Directory. Now he could has, like, he could literally control all your infrastructure here. He can change the passwords of some users. He can create a user for his, for his, like, intention. And this is what we call maintaining access, because, as a hacker, you think about it, how you compromise things, but how you can stay there too. Okay, so this is what we call it about. Now again, when I'm backing to you, I'm talking about, the misconfiguration of the Active Directory. I'm insisting that, again, it's not about really putting the solutions, but it's really, even after putting your or installing your Windows Defender or an Active Directory, you have literally, again, to fix the misconfiguration. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you about, here a specific misconfiguration that happened inside, an Active Directory server, even on your machine. We have basically, two protocols. We call it the LLMNR protocol and the NetBIOS protocol. Okay, what they are doing basically, to make things literally not so complicated, when actually a DNS server fail, those two protocols just, go with work on. I'm gonna just explain more. How it works, it's really not that complicated. Okay, let me give you an example to make you understand well. I can open my whiteboard. So, for example, imagine that, here you are, for example, had your own computer, whatever, and there is, I can say, a backup server there, or a NAS. We can say, like, a NAS. Okay, so now how, like the LLMNR or NetBIOS, basically they are presenting, a misconfiguration vulnerability. So the two protocols, the LLMNR and the NetBIOS, they are activated by default on your computer, and even like on the Active Directory server. Okay, it means the Windows server. Now, if you really, like, we know that the NAS is really shared, on your network, right? So here you want to access the NAS to bring some files and, doing your own stuffs. Now, what's happening is that, imagine that, like, we know that there is like something called DNS, right? What DNS do is like, it's like a translation between the IP domain. It means if you want to access to this backup server, you can hear, like, write on your keyboard backup server, okay? Or you can simply, put the IP of that backup server, okay? You can put the IP. Both of them, they're gonna lead you through the DNS server. It's gonna lead you to access this backup server, okay? So what is actually here the problem, that what if the DNS server is gonna be, like, here fail or not gonna work properly? I'm gonna give an example. I can say the backup server, it calls backup, okay? It calls backup. Now You wanted to access this backup server, but you entered in your keyboard a false IP, okay? Or maybe you put like this, a backup server, messing up the P later. What your computer gonna do, he gonna ask the DNS, hey, did you know something in the network called backup server? The DNS here, he gonna be like, no, I don't know what happened with you. No, there's like no backup server. Now, what's gonna happen automatically on your computer basically gonna send a request. Okay? It's gonna send a request like using LLMNR protocol or NetBIOS, and it's gonna ask all the computer on the network, hey, did you see a backup server? Your computer gonna ask each node on your network. Okay? Let me just explain it more here. I have a great example here. Look at this. So, like through this example that I'm showing you in a bright presentation, again, the first step, imagine that you have like, your workstation. The user gonna incorrectly enter a host name. It means like, the host name, it's incorrect, okay? Backup server, whatever, it doesn't exist on the network. So here, the DNS gonna be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. There is like no backup server inside the network. And then what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen basically, the host discovery protocol, which is broadcast, it mean here the LLMNR or NetBIOS one, they're gonna just send a request for all the network for searching for a backup server. And imagine that actually like requests come to an attacker. I'm gonna explain it more in this one. Look at this one. You have like, here a victim machine. Okay, here is like an active machine, and basically you can just see here like the example. Here's the victim. What he gonna do? He gonna be like, hey, he gonna put a request, okay? Like, hey, can you connect me to a HackM server? Okay, so the DNS server, he gonna be like, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about. There is no HackM, something that called HackM inside the network. Now, what the victim computer gonna do through those protocols, they're gonna send, a request, a multicast or broadcast for all actually, the nodes, or for all, the computers that exist inside the network. But if the hacker could capture these requests, he gonna ask the victim, hey, can you give me the hash, and can you give me some informations to give you an access for a backup server? Or the hacker even act like a backup server. Okay, it's like acting as it's like a resources which does not exist, but it acts like it's the target servers. Okay, so and absolutely, here the victim gonna be like, here we go, you can take my credentials and you can take my informations and absolutely give me the access. So here you're asking a questions maybe. So what is the difference between the LLMNR and NetBIOS? Because both of the protocols, they are doing approximately the same thing. So the LLMNR, it's basically operate and supports both the IPv4 and the IPv6. But the NetBIOS, it's literally just works only with the IP4. For the NetBIOS, it's used the broadcast messages, but the LLMNR used only the multicasts. Okay, so this is some things that you have to know. Okay, now how we can detect this attack with a simple way, I can say, not really that advanced way. We are using something we call a convey scripts. Okay, it's a script, you can find it in a GitHub. Look, if anyone here reads some references, please don't hesitate to contact me on my LinkedIn. I'm gonna share a LinkedIn with you later, and please don't hesitate to send me any other questions or any if you need a references or even if you need scripts. Okay, I can provide this for you. So we use something that's called convey. What the convey do basically, when the request is gonna be sent it, and when it's gonna be captured by an attacker IP that doesn't exist, in the network, we get we will have the ability to capture the IP of the attacker. Okay, I can say like it's like in a honeypot. This script make you launch an LLMNR or an NTBOS requests. Okay, and it's a fake request. This is the thing that you have to know. It's a fake request, but when it's gonna be captured by the attacker, we can literally catch his IP. Okay, so you can find that on LinkedIn. So but it's recommended. What I really recommended is literally you know disabling the protocol. And you can find even that inside the best practice that published by the Microsoft on how to harden a Windows servers. Okay, it's super recommended. How we can just disabling them. First, you can disable them using graphical user interface for NetBIOS. Okay, you can access literally to the settings of your card here, the device card, and totally you can literally disable them. And I'm gonna tell you what is really kind of make it a little bit complicated for NetBIOS. For the NetBIOS, you can disable the protocol through a graphical user interface, but to disable the LLMNR protocol, you need to launch a command on a PowerShell which really modify a register inside the server. And then when we actually change the value of the register inside the server, it's gonna be disabled and you need to reset your server. Okay, it's totally recommended to disable them. Just remember that. Okay, so I hope this session is just beneficial for you and you get a value from it. Please, if you have any questions, if you literally need any references, don't hesitate. Okay, and absolutely, maybe this is one of the specific case when it comes to harden a server, a Windows server basically, and an Active Directory. Just remember, it's not about putting a solution. It's not about putting a solution. It's about how to configure it and how literally to harden it. Okay, is the most important thing. And again, thank you so much, for being here again for DevMenadd. I totally enjoy always to share the knowledge, and I really wanted to make it super easy one because the topic is a little bit sometimes complicated, and absolutely, I hope the information just was super easy to understand by the participants. Thank you for everyone here who was in the webinar, and I hope to see you in the next session. So you can contact me anytime in my LinkedIn to share any references with you. And absolutely, wishing you best of luck in the road of the knowledge. Thank you so much.